Ashley Okland was a 27-year-old realtor living and working in West Des Moines, Iowa, when she was tragically gunned down and killed while conducting an open house on April 8, 2011. It's now been 10 years since Ashley's murder. No arrests have been made, and this case still remains unsolved. Hi guys, I'm Brooke and welcome to Murder in the Midwest. If you're new to my channel, I discuss mainly unsolved homicides and missing persons cases that have occurred in smaller Midwestern communities. Today we're going to be discussing the unsolved murder of 27-year-old Ashley Okland from West Des Moines, Iowa. But first, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up. You can also follow my social media. I'm on Instagram as Murder in the Midwest and also Twitter as Murder Midwest. So let's dive right into Ashley's case. One reason that I was attracted to this case is because Ashley was a realtor and my mother was a realtor my entire life. I never once thought about the fact that her job could be dangerous. And when you think about it, it is. And as I was researching Ashley's cases, all these other unsolved murders, or in some cases solved murders, of realtors popped up that had been killed while on the job, either conducting open houses or showing houses. And when you think about it, yeah, I mean, a realtor is going into a home, sometimes with people they don't know or that they've only talked to on the phone. So it can be a dangerous profession. It is disheartening that after 10 years, no arrests have been made in Ashley's case. So I wanted to highlight what happened to Ashley, get it out there in the hopes that some new tips can come into police. So we're gonna dive right in what happened that day. So it's a typical Friday afternoon, April 8th, 2011. Ashley was working as a realtor for the Iowa Realty group in West Des Moines, Iowa. Ashley was conducting an open house at a development that was fairly new. It was called the Stone Creek Villas, and the actual address she was at was 558 Stone Creek Court in West Des Moines. Now, most of these townhomes were built within the past year, so some were occupied, but some still needed to be sold, hence why Ashley was there conducting an open house. This was a Friday just like any other day. And what's really weird about it is just the coldness and the conciseness of the shooting. Shortly before 2 p.m. on this Friday, Ashley had been texting back and forth with a friend of hers. Typical texting conversation. The friend said it was nothing weird. They were just talking about things in general. A few minutes after that, a neighbor that lived at the townhomes heard 2 gunshots. So she went over to investigate what was going on. She walked into the townhome that Ashley was doing the open house at, and she finds that Ashley has been shot twice. Once in the chest, once in the head. This neighbor calls 911. Paramedics rush Ashley to the hospital, but unfortunately, she died of her injuries. So this sends shockwaves, not just through West Des Moines as a whole, which, you know, is a smaller town, has a population of about 65,000, so a medium-sized city, but in particular, the real estate community in West Des Moines. And if you know anything about real estate, even if you work for different companies, because realtors work so closely together, they know one another. So nobody knew what was going on. And the chief executive of the Iowa Realty Group immediately called for all realtors to shut down their open houses that weekend until they knew what was going on. Was somebody out randomly targeting realtors? Was this intentional? The police immediately gave a statement to the newspaper saying that they did not believe that this was random. This wasn't like, I saw theories where people thought maybe it was a gang initiation, something like that. They believed it was intentional and that Ashley had been targeted, which was even harder for people to believe because Ashley was very well liked in the community. As I said, Ashley was 27 years old. She wasn't originally from West Des Moines, but from a town close to there in Iowa. And she had been living and working as a realtor in West Des Moines for several years. At the time of her death, she was living with her longtime boyfriend. His name was Eric, and they had a little puppy together named Indy. And by all accounts, they had a great relationship. She also had a younger brother, Josh, and a younger sister named Brittany, whom she was very close to as well. And, Ashley was well known in the community, as most realtors are. They try to be involved, get their name out there. She was all about giving back to the community. So she was an active part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, as well as some other nonprofit organizations. Friends said Ashley's biggest worry was just making sure that everybody knew she had time for them because she was always on the go. So this sounds like a rising professional in the community, took her job seriously, liked what she was doing, and was very active and involved in the community. So the fact that somebody just walked in and point blank shot her twice and then walked out was very, very shocking to this community. So immediately authorities don't really have a lot to go on. They're asking for tips from the public. They open up a Crime Stoppers hotline that people could call anonymously to try to get some tips in there. And tips did come flooding in. So I actually saw a news clip from a dispatcher who said that, and this was just a few weeks after Ashley's murder, she said they had at that point about 350 tips that had come in, and 2 or 3 names kept coming up on a regular basis. So that sounded like a promising lead. A few weeks after Ashley's murder, police obtained 4 search warrants. Now these search warrants were sealed, so we to this day don't know what the search warrants were for, who they were for, but it seemed like, okay, they have a promising start. But then everything kind of stalled. A couple of oddities that occurred within the first 2 months after Ashley's case, and some people have speculated, did these things that occurred, did they have anything to do with Ashley's murder, or is it just a random tragic coincidence? So, as I had mentioned earlier, a neighbor had actually heard the gunshots and went in and found Ashley, and she's the one that called 911. This lady was in her early 50s. Her name has never been publicly released, but she was living at the townhomes with her elderly mother. 2 weeks after Ashley's murder, she disappeared. Her mother called police, filed a missing persons report, and she either had left a note or had called her mother. I've read 2 different news articles that said, that, kind of conflicted one another, but in one she said that she called her mother and told her, yes, that basically she was going to kill herself and she was staying at a hotel in the area. Another report I read said she actually left a note in which she stated, basically alluding to the fact she was going to commit suicide and she could be found in a nice hotel. So luckily, police were able to intervene and find this lady before she harmed herself. But it was just kind of a weird blip. Like, a lot of news media around the area picked up on it because they're like, that's, I don't know. It was just it's an odd thing that somebody that found her then 2 weeks later tries to commit suicide. So I don't know if there's a link to Ashley. I mean, 10 years later, probably not, because nothing has ever been said about it. But it was odd. So that was just kind of a weird blip on the radar with this lady, possibly trying to kill herself. Now, whether that had anything to do with Ashley's murder, if she had her own issues, that could have very well been. So as reports and tips are pouring into the police, the only thing they really had to go on was people had said that lived in the area, they had reported seeing a black SUV in the weeks and months leading up to Ashley's death in front of those townhomes. A couple of people said that the person driving the SUV looked scruffy. That's really the only description that they gave of this gentleman, and that on a couple occasions, Ashley was seen standing outside talking to this person in the black SUV. They said it could have been a Cadillac Escalade, but they weren't for sure the make and model. So since that's the only thing police had to go on, they thought, okay, is this a suspect? Should we be looking for somebody in a black SUV? Here's where things get even weirder. So exactly 2 months after Ashley's murder, on June 8th, 2011, a fellow realtor of hers named Joseph Cruz, he was working for Coldwell Banker at the time of his death. He'd been a realtor in West Des Moines for about 30 years. He was found with a gunshot wound to his head inside of his black SUV. Now, his SUV was not a Cadillac Escalade. I'll put up a picture of Joseph. You can decide for yourselves whether you think he's scruffy or not. But when that happened, because reportedly he and Ashley knew each other, and again, they didn't work for the same real estate agency, but real estate agents in the same area, it's a very tight circle. Reportedly they knew one another, reportedly they were friendly with one another. That was shocking to some people, that he committed suicide. It doesn't sound like, from the news article that I read, he left a suicide note. In fact, his sister said police investigated, treated it as a suicide, and because of the ballistics, they determined that yes, he had killed himself. His sister also said in the news article that I read that he had been questioned by police after Ashley's murder, but that he had been dismissed as a suspect. Now, this is his sister saying that. I don't think authorities formally confirmed whether or not Joseph was indeed a suspect or if he was just somebody they talked to. The fact that he drove a black SUV, even though it wasn't a Escalade, had a lot of people, their spidey senses were tingling, like, did he have something to do with Ashley's death? Did he kill Ashley and then he felt bad about it and killed himself? Why would he have shot Ashley? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, I figured, well, if he's a fellow realtor, why wouldn't he be at these villas if they were selling those houses, you know? And if he saw Ashley's car, stopped and talked to her. So I don't think it's strange or out of the ordinary that he could have been the person in the SUV. Doesn't mean that he necessarily had anything to do with Ashley's murder. But again, it was just a weird thing that in 2 months' time, two people that were associated with Ashley, even if it was loosely, one tried to kill themselves, the other one did kill themselves. Now, Joseph's sister also said in the same interview that his suicide had, you know, he was depressed about Ashley, but he also had a lot of financial issues. So that is why she feels he probably shot himself. But again, it's just one of those things that's very weird. Unfortunately, here we are 10 years later, we've just passed the 10-year anniversary of Ashley's murder, and there have never been an arrest made. Altogether, there has been 900 leads. The police have interviewed over 500 people. West Des Moines police are adamant in saying that this is still considered an active case. It is not a cold case. They have a detective that is actively assigned to Ashley's case and is investigating new tips and leads as they come in. But regularly, pretty much every year on the anniversary of Ashley's death, there's a news article, her family gives an interview to the paper, you know, we're still looking for answers. And they're still looking for tips to the public. So Sergeant Jason Bryan with the West Des Moines Police did give a statement to one of the news outlets a while ago in which he said, "It's challenging to put a lot of time into an investigation like that and then get to a point where it slows down quite a bit, but you don't have the information that you're going to need to close the case." I thought that was an interesting quote because it makes it sound like perhaps they do have a suspect in mind, but they don't have the information that they need to make an arrest, which, you know, after studying multiple cold cases over the past year or so, you know, that seems to be a very relevant pattern, that a lot of times authorities have a suspect in mind, they just don't have the information that they need to be able to issue an arrest warrant. There is a very large reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Ashley's murder. It's $150,000 now. It didn't start off that way, but over the years, friends, families, different real estate groups have all contributed to this reward money. So $150,000, it's a lot of money. I am gonna put up the numbers that you can call if you do have any information about Ashley's death, anything that you think would be relevant. Even if you think it's something the police have heard before, you don't know. So go ahead, call those numbers. There is a number that I'll put up that's anonymous if you do wish to remain anonymous. Another thing that's a little frustrating about Ashley's murder is the fact that we don't have a lot of information from the police about the actual crime scene or what occurred. They have never said what type of gun was used in her murder. They have said that she was not sexually assaulted. So this is where a lot of people, if we go back to the actual crime, we know it was a very quick few minutes because we know the time that she was texting her friend, the last text that she sent, we know when her neighbor called 911. So it's a very tight time frame. So to me, I feel like somebody did just walk in, shot Ashley in the head, once in the chest, and walked back down. It's amazing that nobody saw this person. There were not any security cameras at those townhomes, so unfortunately nothing was captured on like a security camera type situation. If police ever obtained a different view or a different security camera, they have never publicly said that. But this is why a lot of people feel like it may have been a professional hit because it was so precise, it was so quick. Usually crimes of passion, if somebody was upset with Ashley, it would have been messier. There were no signs of a struggle. She wasn't sexually assaulted, so that kind of rules out. I know a lot of people have thrown out, maybe she had a stalker. She never mentioned that to anybody, and I just don't feel like this is the pattern that a stalker would follow, especially since she wasn't sexually assaulted. It does feel like it was either a professional hit or somebody trying to make it look like it was a professional hit. The only thing that's to me doesn't signify that it was a professional hit is the fact that they didn't use a silencer, so those gunshots alerted the neighbors. So that's why I think it might be somebody who was trying to make it look like a professional hit. But again, we go back to why. Why would anybody have wanted Ashley dead? It doesn't make a lot of sense. As I said, they ruled out those closest to her. They don't believe that the boyfriend was involved. There wasn't any third parties involved. Nobody was having an affairs, anything like that. It's just so strange. Some people have theorized, was it a case of mistaken identity? Was somebody else supposed to have been killed and they accidentally killed Ashley? I don't know. I mean, I feel like these open houses are very well publicized, so they would have known exactly who would have been working that open house. So I don't know. I don't know if I buy that it was a case of mistaken identity. Others have said, could this have been a real estate deal gone bad? I think her father even gave an interview to True Crime Daily where he had suggested, was it another realtor that was professionally jealous of Ashley? I mean, that seems really extreme to go to those measures to kill somebody that you're jealous of, especially because there's a lot of realtors in the area. So I just can't imagine that they're going around killing their competition, but that's a theory that's been thrown out there as well. Again, we don't have a real motive for this crime whatsoever. So that's another reason why it makes it that much more mind-boggling, is just the fact that she was an upstanding citizen. She, to our knowledge, wasn't involved in anything that she shouldn't have been involved in. One thing that I thought about, just again tying her murder with Joseph's suicide, is, did they find out something that they weren't supposed to know, and that's the reason that Ashley was murdered? Did Joseph commit suicide, or was it staged to look like he committed suicide? Again, it didn't appear that he left a suicide note. I don't know. You know, that's a theory. Again, it's been 10 years, so if there was any connection between those two deaths, I feel like authorities would have found that by now. But it's just a theory. I probably watched too many movies and I'm coming up with too many scenarios here, but it is just very, very puzzling that the both of them would be dead within 2 months, and they both worked in the real estate market in West Des Moines. You know, we have a lot of unanswered questions about Ashley's murder, and doesn't seem like there's a real motive as to why Ashley was killed. So it is frustrating, and you know, my hope is that one day her family is going to be able to get the closure that they need, and we will know who killed Ashley Okland. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.